Hi everyone, welcome to the first round of the World Chess Championship 2018. Here Fabiano Caruana as white played e4, Carlsen replied c5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, g6, bishop takes c6, d takes c6. So black now has doubled pawns, but in return he has gained the two bishops. d3, bishop g7, h3 to stop bishop g4, knight f6, knight c3, knight d7, bishop e3, and now e5 by Carlsen, clamping down on the dark squares in the center. Castles, b6, and now knight h2 by Caruana. So he is preparing to play f4, and this would open the f-file for the rook on f1, but the downside is that after taking on f4, black's bishop on g7 would be opened up on the diagonal. Knight f8 by Carlsen. He is maneuvering to e6. f4, e takes f4, rook takes f4. So as you can see, the rook's on an open file, but the bishop's diagonal has been opened. Bishop e6, rook f2, h6, queen d2, and now g5 by Carlsen. So yeah, he's setting up shop on the dark squares here. A lot of dark squared control. Rook on a to f1, queen d6, and now knight to g4. Castles long, knight f6, knight d7, knight h5, and now bishop e5. And it does seem quite pleasant for black here, because we've got this very nice bishop on e5. Look at the dark squared control black has. And because Carlsen has the two bishops, we've got this bishop on e6, making sure the light squares have sufficient defense as well. g4, f6, b3, bishop f7, knight d1, and here Carlsen could have just taken on h5, and this looks very strong. After knight f8, the knight is going to maneuver to the f4 square, and it's going to be very good for black. But instead Carlsen played knight f8 immediately, but the problem is now Caruana does just win the f6 pawn after knight takes f6. However, it is still good for white. After knight h5, takes, knight f4, knight takes f4, and g takes f4. This position is still very pleasant. Compare the bishop on e5, which is very strong, very centrally placed, to the knight on d1. Black's got an open g-file here, which he can place a rook on, attacking the king. So rook to g2 by Carlsen, rook on h to g8, queen to e2, rook takes g2, queen takes g2, queen to e6, preparing to play rook g8, knight f2, rook g8, knight to g4, and now queen e8. Quite a nice move. Carlsen looks at the position, he sees a weakness on h5, so he maneuvers the queen to attack it. Queen to f3, queen takes h5, king f2, bishop c7, king e2, queen g5, and here Caruana does seem to be in some trouble as h5 is coming, kicking the knight back, and then black can penetrate down the g-file. Knight h2, h5, rook f2, queen g1, penetration, knight f1, h4, king d2, king b7, c3 by Caruana. And here it does seem that Carlsen missed a big chance to play the very nice exchange sacrifice rook to g3. After knight takes g3, h takes g3, rook to g2, queen to a1, and black is just mopping up the queen side. You can see these really strong connected pass pawns. Caruana has to keep his pieces blockading those, and Carlsen's just going to mop up these pawns if he played this. But instead, after c3, he played bishop to e5, king c2, and queen g7, an alternative plan to put pressure on c3, but it's just not as strong. Knight h2, bishop takes c3, but now the f4 pawn goes. And yeah, Caruana has definitely got rid of most of Carlsen's advantage. Bishop d4, queen f7 check, trading pieces, king a6, queen takes g7, rook takes g7, rook e2, rook g3 before knight g4 is played to get that h-pawn. But unfortunately, the e-pawn is just such a strong pass pawn, and Carlsen has to move backwards to blockade it. The knight h6, h3, knight f5, bishop f6, a3, b5, b4, c takes b4, a takes b4, bishop takes e7 by Carlsen. And the idea is now that after rook takes e7, then the h-pawn is going to promote. So, after bishop takes e7, knight takes e7 by Caruana, h2, Caruana has to take the pawn, and now Carlsen gets the piece back. And here we have a rook and pawn ending, which, yeah, the players moved around for a very long time, not really achieving much. At some point Carlsen could have tried this a5 move, but he didn't. And yeah, just an awful lot of maneuvering, nothing much happened at all. a6 was played at some point. As you can see, just a lot of moving around. And eventually, Carlsen let Caruana take the pawn on a6. In return, he got the pawn on d4, but this is still just a dead draw. Black cannot make any progress here. And finally, after 115 moves, the players agreed to a draw. Okay, thank you very much for watching.